Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. This is Lifestyle Critic, where we break down movies and TV shows into their core elements, and in this video we are going to be reviewing the recently released Locked Down, which, whilst it does have a really great cast attached to it, I was just really disappointed by this movie. I mean, it's presented as a bit of a romantic comedy heist drama set during the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately it just doesn't do any of those things that well. I mean, the romantic comedy side of this movie was just really disappointing. It just was not that funny. The heist aspect of this movie was just so disappointing and was so anticlimactic, and the COVID-19 aspect side of things, they really could have played into that so much more, but they just didn't, and I was just really disappointed in this film. I totally understand and I totally get the limitations and the restrictions that they were under as they filmed this movie during the pandemic, so I totally understand that obviously they're not going to be able to access things in the same way that they can with other movies. But the final execution of this film was just really dull, really uninspiring, and really should have been so much better and could have been so much better than it was, because the premise of this movie was so decent, and the actors associated with this film were absolutely brilliant as well. And I'm going to be breaking it all down for you in this movie review. So from a storyline point of view, we're introduced to the two lead characters, Linda and Paxton, who are both disgruntled with their lives and their careers during the pandemic. One day, as luck would have it, both of their assignments are crossing paths, and they decide to go on a bit of an elaborate heist mission to try and steal a £3 million diamond from Harrods whilst everyone is in lockdown, and while there are greater opportunities to pull this kind of a heist off. Now, whilst I was excited about this premise, as let's be honest, it does actually sound pretty decent, the final execution was just unfortunately really dull, really uninspiring, and really unexciting as well. So from a cast and characters point of view, like I said before, they had a brilliant cast associated with this project. I just don't think they utilised them in the best way possible, but either way, let's go through them one by one. So first up we have Anne Hathaway, who plays a character called Linda, the CEO of a fashion company who has to do some really questionable things during lockdown pandemic, and Anne Hathaway is absolutely brilliant in terms of playing these high-flying leader type characters of an organisation. Next up we have Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays a character called Paxton, who is Linda's partner, although they are on a bit of a separation, and during the pandemic he has actually been furloughed, so he's feeling really disgruntled in life. There are also really nice cameo appearances on Zoom calls from Ben Stiller and from Ben Kingsley as well, which is really great. But like I said, I just feel like they could have maximised these cast so much more, as the first 2/3 of this movie are all just about life during a pandemic and loads of different Zoom calls happening, and the final act of this movie is where we have the whole heist mission. But even then, they really could have made that so much more exciting. So I just feel like the premise and the cast that they had at their disposal were absolutely brilliant, and they just should have made so much more of that in this movie. So from a visuals point of view, like I said before, there were loads of Zoom calls happening in the first 2/3 of this movie, which is fine. Obviously that's what's going to happen during a pandemic, but I just feel like it was a lot more focused on what is life like for these characters during a pandemic, as opposed to focusing on the heist aspect of this movie. It was really interesting as well to see really limited characters, really limited actors on the different set pieces. Of course, they have to adhere to COVID restrictions, so from that point of view, it was really interesting to see how different this movie was going to be made. The scenes in Harrods were really interesting, especially being able to see the behind the scenes of Harrods and what it's like to actually be a staff member and see how all the behind the scenes stuff works, and then going into the shop floor, which is how you know Harrods. So seeing that behind the scenes aspect was really interesting. But like I said, from a visuals point of view, they could have made it even more impactful in this movie. So from a comparison point of view, in terms of another movie that was filmed during the COVID-19 pandemic but actually did a really good job in terms of being really exciting, is Songbird. I feel like if you compare Songbird to Lockdown, Songbird is so much stronger. And also from a heist point of view, God, there's so many better heist movies out there, such as the Oceans franchise, such as Now You See Me, The Hustle, which also stars Anne Hathaway, Hustlers, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There are so many better heist movies, and I was hoping and expecting Lockdown would also be in that top group, but unfortunately it just isn't from a comparisons point of view. So overall, I'm sure you can tell I was hoping and expecting Lockdown would be so much better than it was, as it had such a great premise and such a great cast associated with this film, but unfortunately the execution of this film wasn't as great as it could have been and should have been. And so for all of those reasons, I have to give Lockdown a 3 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.